Hello and welcome to my introduction to cables and reading cable abbreviations. In this particular video I'm going to be focusing on abbreviations that include two numbers, 2/1 RC or 1/1 LPC for example. You might be here because you find these kind of abbreviations confusing, and I hope I can help you with that today. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to break down the abbreviation 2/1 RC. And we're going to go through what the numbers and the letters all mean. If you want to read this abbreviation, you would read it as 2/1 right cross. So the slash symbol represents the word over. The letter R represents right, and the C represents cross. In this case, we're taking 2 stitches over 1 stitch, and it's going to be right leaning because it's got R in the symbol. As an alternative, you could use the abbreviation C3B instead. C standing for cable, 3 meaning the total number of stitches that the cable is worked across, and B meaning that it's a back cross cable. It's important to remember that if you want to make a right leaning cable or a right cross cable, then that can also be referred to as a back cross cable. And that's because the cable needle will be at the back behind your knitting needles. So far on my channel, I've only demonstrated even cables, where we twist 2 stitches over 2 stitches or 3 stitches over 3 stitches, for instance. So far, I've not demonstrated an uneven cable, which is what the 2/1 RC is. Uneven cables travel across your knitting. For instance, this cable involves moving 2 stitches over 1, and it will produce a right leaning cable. So essentially you're moving a 2-stitch cable 1 stitch to the right. So uneven cables can travel diagonally all across your knitting. Okay, so let's go through quickly a few more examples. This abbreviation will be read as 1/2 left cross, and it would be a left leaning cable, where 1 stitch is passed over 2. It could also be described as a C3F cable. This next cable is a 1/1 right purl cross cable. The addition of the letter P means that there is at least 1 purl in this cable. The purl stitch or purl stitches are nearly always passed behind, or are in the back of the twist, rather than in the front. So in this case we can assume that it's going to be a 1 knit stitch passed over 1 purl stitch. The R means it's right leaning, so the cable needle will be held at the back. Technically, this cable could also be referred to as a C2B. And the last one is 2/1 left purl cross. Again, it's a left leaning cable, so the cable needle will be held at the front. The letter P means there is a purl, and as I said before, the purl is nearly always in the back of the cable, so that will be what the number 1 represents. So we can assume that it's 2 knit stitches passed over 1 purl stitch, and it's left leaning. Technically, this could also be referred to as a C3F, which is what the 1/2 LC could also be referred to. And that shows you a problem with that kind of symbol. It tells you the overall number of stitches and if it's a front cross or a back cross, but it doesn't tell you how those numbers and how those stitches are split. So if you read C3F, you don't know if it's a 1/2 or a 2/1 cable. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little demo to try and make the whole process of making cables look a lot clearer, and I'm going to use pieces of ribbon. I'm going to do a very simple run through of a 2/2 left cross using the black and silver ribbon. I'm going to imagine that the black ribbon is 2 stitches wide and the silver ribbon is 2 stitches wide. In real life, these would all be the same stitch and all be the same colour. Okay, so first I'm going to put the first 2 stitches onto the cable needle. And I'm going to hold that cable needle at the front. I then knit 2 stitches with my knitting needles, so the silver gets knitted and moves over to the right hand needle. This means that the silver has now passed behind the black. I would then knit the 2 stitches off the cable needle. So on the left hand needle we had the 2 stitches of the black ribbon and then the 2 stitches of the silver ribbon. But now on the right hand needle we have the 2 stitches of the silver ribbon first, and then we have the 2 stitches of the black ribbon, and that creates the cross. So that's a 2/2 left cross. We're now going to do a 2/2 right cross. So again, we take the 2 knit stitches of the black ribbon and put them on the cable needle. And we hold this cable needle at the back. We then knit the 2 stitches of the silver ribbon, so that moves over to the right hand needle. Then I knit the 2 stitches from the cable needle. So again, we've gone from the black ribbon, then the silver, to the silver, then the black. So we've crossed the ribbons over, and this time the silver is in front of the black ribbon, and it's right leaning. Okay, so this time I have half the black ribbon, which I'm using to represent 1 knit stitch. So I've got the 2 knit stitches of the silver ribbon first, then 1 stitch of the black ribbon. I'm going to do a 2/1 left cross. Obviously in real life this would just be 3 normal knit stitches all in the same colour. So first I slip the 2 stitches of the silver ribbon to the cable needle and hold it at the front. I then knit the 1 stitch of the black ribbon, so that then crosses behind the silver. Then I knit the 2 stitches off the cable needle. So now I have on the right hand needle the black ribbon first and then the silver, with the silver crossing over the black. As you can see, the silver is left leaning. And finally I'm going to do a 1/2 right cross. So I slip the 2 stitches of the silver ribbon to the cable needle and hold the cable needle at the back. I then knit the 1 stitch of the black ribbon so it crosses in front of the silver. Then I knit the stitches off the cable needle. Again, this puts the black ribbon ahead of the silver, and it also, this time, puts the black ribbon in front of the silver. The black ribbon is right leaning. So I hope that makes the movement of the stitches a little bit clearer by using different colours. Lastly, I'm going to show you a sample that I've knitted. You'll be able to see that there is garter stitch at either end and either side, and in the centre is stockinette stitch. The zigzag is made up of a 2/1 LPC at the bottom. Then the central cable is a 2/1 RPC, and then at the top is a 2/1 LC. So looking more closely at the left leaning cable at the bottom, it's a 2/1 cable, so the front of the cable is 2 stitches wide, and that was taken over 1 purl stitch because it's an LPC cable. So that means for every time I did this cable stitch, the cable moved 1 stitch to the left. And then above that left leaning cable, I did the right leaning equivalent. And then the top left leaning cable is the same as the bottom left leaning cable, except it doesn't have a purl stitch. It's all knit stitches. And really that's the most important thing I wanted to point out in this sample. If you look above the 2/1 LPC, you'll see that it doesn't really blend in with the surrounding stockinette stitch. Whereas if we look above the 2/1 LC, which doesn't have the purl stitch in, you can see it blends a lot better. That's because the stockinette background has knit stitches on the front, on the right side of the knitting. So if you introduce a purl, then that purl then sits between the cable and the background stitch. And that's why the cable at the bottom looks separate to the background, because there are purl stitches separating the two. And that's not really what you want. So why do 2/1 LPCs and 2/1 RPCs exist? Well, because usually you'll find them on a reverse stockinette background instead, where purl stitches are at the front on the right side of the knitting. And therefore you want to use purls in the back of the cable twists, because then that will blend in with the background of reverse stockinette. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this sample, it's that you should use purl crosses on reverse stockinette backgrounds and knit crosses, so just regular crosses, on a stockinette background. Because then you don't get this weird knit stitch, purl stitch transition at the side of the cable. Right, so that's all I wanted to explain today, and I really hope that's made it a little bit clearer. Thank you very much for watching.